it.
Slow Drag with Remedy. I've had a 30-year love affair with the masterful poetry of Elvis Costello. We've been advised to not try to read a mind that's full of disappearing ink, so I'll leave deeper and possibly more personal interpretations to others. I'm content going through life not knowing who Allison really is. I don't even know if his jazz master has a second name. Often dense, complicated, and undeniably clever, his words can fly by in a tangle of imagery, alliteration, and obscure references. That's why I prefer to simply linger over the genius of the words themselves, the poetry at the core of each song that is beautifully arranged and beautifully sung. The music, masterful. The voice, that of an angel. But for me, it's always been about the words. This podcast has no lofty ambition. It's simply an appreciation. It is an appreciation of a peerless poet whose words continue to confound and continue to inspire. Today's slow drag is with Poor Napoleon from Blood and Chocolate, released in 1986. Songwriter credit goes to Elvis Costello. Seeing that I once named a beloved dog after this song, I figured it's as good a place as any to start this appreciation. I can't lie on this bed anymore. It burns my skin. You can take the truthful things you've said to me and fit them on the head of a pin. Poor Napoleon. This seems like a pretty straightforward allusion to the expression of how many angels can fit, stand, dance on a very tiny surface, the number of which is slim at best. So, seeing that there's little trust or virtue to be found, maybe the person has just discovered they're in a bed that might not be all that it seems. Either way, something has changed and not for the better. The expression to fit something on the head of a pin is used as part of an example in the logic argument to get a point across, known in English as a reduction to absurdity. It's an argument that becomes absurd through its denial. You always look so disappointed when I take my stockings off. Don't you know the facts of life, boy? Don't you know what these things cost? The cloaking, the switching, the insinuation of gender are masterfully modeled through so many of his songs, and this one is no exception. She was selling stolen kisses to traveling salesmen and minstrel singers. You put a penny in the slot. She called you her magic fingers. Poor Napoleon. This last line takes us back to the first line about the bed and how it burns the skin. Marketed as for your comfort and relaxation, the brand Magic Fingers was a coin-operated relaxation service that was once popular in many roadside motels in the United States. For just a quarter, the motel room's mattress would vibrate for 15 minutes. It's possible, I suppose, that this verse helps inform the location and perhaps the circumstances of the first lines. I bet she isn't all that's advertised. I bet that isn't all she fakes. Just like that place where they take your spine and turn it into soapflakes. More than just a romantic failing that the first two lines of this verse might suggest. The mention of turning body parts into soapflakes or laundry detergent conjures the images of the so-called corpse factory or the corpse utilization plant, where dead soldiers' bodies were reportedly melted down into tallow by their own country in order to make candles, soap, and other household goods. This was later determined to be mere propaganda, they say, an invention of British intelligence during the First World War and not actually true. For the purpose of Poor Napoleon itself, this propaganda helps to reinforce how it is possible to fit the truth on the head of a pin. Also, the words advertised and soapflakes together might, of course, definitely connote that this situation is a worthy comparison to the melodrama staple common to everyday soap operas. Bare wires from the socket to the bed where you embraced that girl. Did you ever think there's far too many people in the world? Adultery, deception, intrigue, maybe even contraception. Seems there was a lot of electricity in that bed. Or could it have been from the magic fingers pulled from the wall of a cheap motel and is now strangling someone with its cord? Dark indeed. One day they'll probably make a movie out of all of this. There won't even have to be a murder, just a slow dissolving kiss. Poor Napoleon. A dissolve, as you know, is a film term that means to blend one scene into another, one situation fading out while another situation fades in. In filmmaking editing, it's been referred to as the hardest cut. So good night, little schoolboy. You'd better learn some self-control. Did you mess up your hairstyle? Pour scorn in your begging bowl? The thought that all of this could be a young man's libidinous musing brings us back to the choral lament of Poor Napoleon. Remember being asked, "Don't you know the facts of life, boy?" Get all dressed up with the high hopes of conquering the world, only to make a mess of yourself and to have scorn or contempt poured into your begging bowl, ending up with a whole lot of nothing, sleeping alone, exiled to your own Elba. I can't tell you what I heard exactly, probably something about four score and something or other, but I had no idea that the last line is pour scorn, SCORN, in your begging bowl until I read the words for this project. Just another good reason to give it a slow drag. There are so many layers, so many hidden gems, and so many turns of phrases to ponder. Sometimes, however, even with Elvis Costello lyrics, it's fun to mishear a lyric or two. Eggcorn, it's called. Like when instead of the word fighter, I hear, "Don't you know the difference between a lover and a writer?" Because in my mind, writer makes much more sense when you're talking about writing a book. So get this, framed within 3 minutes and 24 seconds, the poetry of this song touches upon a Latin logic argument that ends in absurdity, a mid-century novelty mattress shaker, a World War I propaganda campaign, and even a cinematic device of fading out one scene as you fade in another. I mentioned how I named my dog Napoleon after this song. Napoleon Dynamite, to be exact, although I'd go on to disavow the dynamite part after the movie of the same name was released in 2003. Calling it a pretty embarrassing coincidence, the filmmaker sticks by his insidious story that he was wholly unaware of Costello's persona. I'm sure he's a fine figure of a man. When my Napoleon was a puppy, each night I'd put him in his training crate saying, "Good night, little schoolboy. You'd better learn some self-control." A little brown and white Pomeranian, Napoleon proved himself to be a clever boy who went on to be a wonderful little companion over the course of our 16 years together. Occasionally, I'd call him my little schoolboy for fun. Now I merely say, "Good night, little schoolboy," as a nice way to remember my dear departed Polly boy. In addition to the small humiliations, It's the fleeting and warm moments that our memory piles on. Dig it. Again, this has been a slow drag with Poor Napoleon from 1986's Blood and Chocolate. Thank you very much for finding this podcast appreciation of Elvis Costello's poetry and listening all the way to the end. For your convenience, in the show notes, you will find the YouTube link to the actual song, as well as links to references made in this episode. Information and transcripts can also be found on our companion blog. So, until next time, adieu, my little ballyhoo. Slow drag with Remedy.